Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Premier. On October 7th, the Premier was asked by a journalist if the option for virtual presentations for members to the Law Amendments Committee would continue, and at that time, the Premier, much to our enjoyment and happiness, said yes, they would continue. He said that people who couldn't get to Halifax would have their voices heard by the committee. But yesterday, after he voted down our motion for virtual presentations, or his caucus did, when he was asked again, the Premier said, if people have something to say, they can just come here and say it. And so my question is, will the Premier explain why he's already walked back his promise to make law amendments more accessible to the most Nova Scotians who don't live in Halifax?
The Honourable Premier.
Law amendments are a very unique part of the lawmaking process here in this province, but certainly we're doing a lot to make sure that this government is held accountable by the opposition, changes to Public Accounts Committee back to what it should be, and by the people. And we're open to the idea of. I think there's some questions around the ability to flip back to in-person and the technology on the virtual stuff. We'll have those discussions. But what I would say is this. I haven't heard from a whole series of people who were not able to make their voices heard on Bill 1 or other bills in this province. So with this government is moving forward on a number of initiatives, and the people of this province will have plenty of ways to have their say on the legislation before this House, and that's what we're committed to. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We'd be happy to forward the correspondence we've received to the Premier's office, so we'll be doing that. And I want to make clear that when I say adding the virtual capability, in fact, what this government has done is removed the virtual capability that existed throughout the pandemic. So we have taken a step backwards. And Mr. Speaker, this is important because in 2017, this House passed landmark accessibility legislation which came about in no small part because of the Law Amendments Committee, and which established the Accessibility Directorate, which then launched a series of consultations towards the goal of making Nova Scotia completely accessible by 2030. Last session, after several requests and motions, the Law Amendments Committee finally introduced CART services and real-time video. The ability to make presentations virtually is a way to make the People's House accessible to all people. And so I will ask the Premier again why his caucus voted against a motion to make the Law Amendments Committee, to keep the Law Amendments Committee accessible to all people.
The Honourable Premier.
I think what we saw was a return to normal of the Law Amendments Committee, with people actually having their say in a society where we're trying to return to normal. So look, we had a Law Amendments Committee. It was very well.
Order, please. The Premier has the floor.
It was very well attended. And we heard the voices of Nova Scotians on the issues they wanted to raise. We're concerned about making sure that this province and this House is accessible. We'll take these things. We're gonna continue to look at what's possible to make sure that it's truly accessible to Nova Scotians. But Nova Scotians should know, despite the efforts of the oppositions to whip a frenzy up in another way, their voices, they have every opportunity. They have every opportunity to be heard by this government. Every single opportunity.
Please.
Thank you, Mr.